Today on Cryptic Mass Guitar, we do a comparison between the Gibson USA SG Special and the Gibson Custom 1963 SG Special VOS. Now there's chapter markers, but there's like three things I gotta get out of the way here really quickly. Number one, we're all adults here. We're looking at a moderately expensive guitar and an expensive guitar. Which basically means I know what the comments are gonna be. You're either gonna think the Epiphone's better, think that it's a waste of money for the Gibson USA and an extreme waste for the Gibson Custom, or you're gonna like this better than this, or you're gonna like this better than this, and you're gonna wanna tell people, I spent less money, I'm smarter. I spent more money, I'm smarter. I went middle of the road, I'm smarter. Just let people enjoy their guitars. On that same note, when I say VOS, it's going to annoy some people and get... There are copyright notices that show that VOS stands for Vintage Original Specification. VOS currently, for Gibson, is used as Vintage Original Sheen. It applies to the name of the finish, which used to just be Vintage Patina, and the finish of the hardware. It's to differentiate it from the Murphy Lab. In the past, Gibson has actually used VOS as Vintage Original Stock, Vintage Original Specification, which they hold the copyright to, Vintage Original Spec, which currently I believe is automotive copyright. I'm not sure for sure. Vintage Old Stock, Vintage Old Spec, that kind of thing. So I get it. Just let it be. Just take a look on their website for VOS. It applies to their finish right now, but you're right. And the last thing here is YouTube videos are fantastic. So you know, if you wanted to buy one of these guitars and you know, are looking for a little bit of a different perspective, you can get that. You can hear both of these guitars for yourself, albeit it's in someone else's hands with someone else's choice of what to play, what tuning to use, what amp to use, and what settings on those amps. So don't use YouTube videos as a sole reason as to why you're buying a guitar, other than just the fact that you want it. Make sure you try it out. If you have that ability, go to the store, try it out, and try out other guitars. You never know what might actually speak to you. Okay, with that out of the way, I have 5 sound samples for you today with 5 different amps in 5 different tunings, and because it's this channel, last one's going to be a full-on metal sound sample. Alright, so that's it for all of the different sound samples. Again, try it for yourself. Don't use this video just for, you know, like, oh, I bought it because I liked how you played it. Try it out, please. So to this point in the video, I like to talk about the specs, and then I like to talk about my thoughts on both of these guitars, because I own both of these guitars currently. However, there is another video that I've made where I actually go a little more in depth into the spec differences here. So I'm just going to give you the like cliff notes here on the spec differences. If you want something more in depth that actually shows me taking the control cavities off and, you know, taking closer looks at some of the differences, take a look for that video. It's just called What's the Difference Between Both of These Guitars. So let's quickly go in through the specs. So the Gibson USA has a gloss nitrocellulose finish. The Gibson Custom has a VOS, Vintage Original Sheen, which is vintage patina, so a lighter coating of gloss nitrocellulose. Both are mahogany bodies. The Gibson USA is typically 2 pieces. I know you're the only one in the world who has a single piece of mahogany. Gibson is extremely good at hiding seams. I've known a couple of people that swore up and down that they had single piece mahogany bodies on SGs, and after about 5 years of cold, warm, you actually start to see the line in the finish where they actually glued it together. It happens in Gibson USA where they actually have something that doesn't meet the Gibson Custom spec, and that single piece of wood is big enough to make a single piece SG. But it's rare. And single piece graded mahogany for the Custom. Both guitars have gloss nitrocellulose finish necks. They're both single-piece mahogany. The verbiage on the Gibson USA is mahogany neck, whereas this is solid mahogany. They're one-piece necks. There's no scarf joints here. Both also have the slim taper. Now, the Gibson Custom has the authentic 60s or vintage 60s C profile. Basically, that translates to it's like 1 millimeter or half a millimeter thicker than this one. Both have bound rosewood fretboards with the dot inlays. Now, the fret nibs that are on here, it's thicker binding and thicker fret nibs on the Gibson USA and thinner on the Gibson Custom. Some people hate fret nibs. Some people call them nubbies. The Gibson USA has a Graphtec nut, whereas we have a nylon nut on the Gibson Custom. On the front of the headstock, you'll see on the Gibson USA, we have the silkscreen Gibson logo. Previous years, I think like before 2020, they actually had an inlaid logo. The Gibson Custom has the inlaid, oh God, I can't remember what it's called, like cellulose nitrate inlay here. And the truss rod covers are slightly different. On the back of the headstock is where you will find the tuners. So on the Gibson USA, we have modern sizing Gibson Vintage Deluxe tuners. What does that mean? It means if you want to swap these out for like locking tuners or like just regular Grovers, you can do so without widening the holes. You can't on the Gibson Custom. These are vintage sizing. They're also the Kluson Vintage Deluxe 3 on a plate. And they warm my little inner guitar nerd's heart. Both have 2-volume, 2-tone. Both have the Gibson branded CTS audio taper potentiometers. We've got orange drop capacitors in the Gibson USA and black beauties in the Gibson Custom. For pickups, we have the Gibson P90 soap bar style, and then the custom Gibson P90 soap bar style here. Basically, pickup wise, if you want to know some of the difference, these are hotter with a touch more high end to them. Not like a sweet one, but I mean, just adjusting the pickup height or the string height will kind of help that a little bit, whereas this is just a little more balanced and not as hot as the Gibson USA. Both also have the lightning bar. However, this has the VOS finish on it. I know you guys, vintage original spec, they changed the verbiage. I didn't do it, it's Gibson. And if you're also interested, both have 3-way toggle switches. So again, if you're interested in more things like short tenon versus long tenon and the glues used, hot hide glue and tight bond, that stuff, and you know, seeing inside the control cavities, take a look at that other video. So what I like to do now, after going over the spec differences and similarities, is just talk about my thoughts on both of these guitars, because in all honesty, I can't sit here and just go like, it's all about sound. There's a lot about feel, and just like tone, feel can be subjective. We're all different, right? And what we want, what we're looking for in a guitar. But like, I've been playing for 30 years, so there's a few things that I may notice that maybe some people don't notice, but there's other people out there who notice way more than I do. So remember when I talked about the finish? I'm just going to call it vintage patina. This is a lighter finish on the Gibson Custom Shop. This is a thicker finish on the Gibson USA. Now, different things like solid mahogany, the glue used and stuff like that, versus, you know, multi-pieces, so more glue and the different type of glue that they use and everything. That could translate into this. This is also a solid color, whereas this is a aniline dye stain. So what I'm getting at here is when you play it, the feel in your body when you're playing it. So a lot of people, when they say resonance, for some reason they think resonance. Yeah, the guitar rings out. It has resonance. Resonance generally means like the low end, whereas presence feels or is the top end, right? So if your guitar rings out, more than likely you mean that it's a very present guitar. So this is a little more resonant than it is present. So when I'm playing it, and it's not gonna, I tried this before, it's not gonna translate properly, but when I'm playing it, I feel just a little more in my body. Similar to when you have one with satin nitro, right? There's just a ton of resonance in it. There's not as much in this. And there's like no presence, or not no presence, there's just very little presence. So what they do is they toss on a maple neck to balance that, because maple has a little bit of snap to it. Now the Gibson Custom, generally when we're talking about the vintage patina, I won't say VOS, we're talking about that finish because it's a little lighter. Generally, that actually adds a little more presence, and it usually balances things out, whereas the Gibson USAs traditionally have a good balance, not a ton of resonance, but there's more presence in it than there is resonance. For some reason, that SG Special is a little different. And usually that balances things out with this type of finish. However, this here, I mean, it does balance it out, but there's not as much resonance in this as there is with that. So you still feel quite a bit of it in your body, but it's like evenly balanced, where you're feeling like the low end I always feel on my body, and the presence, like the top end, I always feel in my hands. So when I'm playing this, I feel it in my body, but I feel a lot of it in my hands as well. So it just seems like it's a good balance. I'd also take this time to just remind you that we as guitar players are crazy. And to the one guy that I offended because I'm not crazy, I've been tested. Cool, I'm crazy. As far as playability, same shape, right? I mean, different contours and different carvings and stuff like that. But I mean, you're still gonna have that great access on both to the 22nd fret. If you're going from a Les Paul to this, it's gonna feel like everything's shifted like 2 inches away from your body. And you know, the positioning here of the toggle switch and the potentiometers are the same. One note here, look at the pickups. Look at the spacing of the pickups here. Different. That means the pick guards are different as well. And as far as tuning stability for both are excellent. Generally, when you're looking at tuning stability issues, like the G string issue, which is way worse on a Strat, and no one ever brings it up. But when you're looking at tuning stability issues, everyone always talks about the G string slipping. And we have a Graphtec nut here and a nylon nut, and both of these have vintage style tuners. And for some reason, people think that the vintage style means that, oh yeah, guitars back in the day didn't hold their tune. That's not the case here. Generally, when you're looking at tuning stability issues, it's either a neck issue, whether it's not reinforced enough. Cue the tinfoil hat people who think there's a conspiracy theory with Gibson and maple necks. It's generally going to be like a neck reinforcement issue. It's something to do with your hardware, whether it's, you know, failing material, like subpar material that's being used in the bridge, or for some reason subpar material making the tuners flimsy. or it's going to be the way that you tune your guitar. So you have to tune it up to pitch. If you tune it down to pitch, it's going to start going flat the moment you either strike the strings too hard or start bending. So you always tune up to pitch. After that, you have to worry about the amount of slack on the post and anything binding in the nut. So you tug on your string, that'll pull the slack around the post, and that'll kind of reseat things in the nut. And, tune up to pitch again. I do that 3 times, and then usually I don't have any tuning stability issues. I do that on any guitar. Paul Reed Smith as well, Fender as well, Gretsch as well, although that's a pain in the on a Bigsby. But the fact that this is a Graphtec nut and a nylon nut, and they're vintage tuners, it's not something you have to worry about. Just tune the appropriate way, and just, when you're tuning, just don't tune the one time. Tune and then kind of tug on things, and then tune again and then do it again. So that's definitely my feelings here on both of these guitars. Now, I owned this. I just got this. Well, a little while ago. So I've had it. I've had some time to actually go over the guitars and everything. And currently, I have 8 Gibson custom reissues. They all have the hot hide glue. They all have nylon nuts. They all hold their tune very well. They all ring out like one damn piece of wood. So I have both of these, right? And that's my current situation. So I'm actually going to, I love this guitar, but I'm actually going to be putting this on the used market. Please don't make me an offer. I don't like shipping at all. It's like extreme circumstances when I ship a guitar. I don't trust the postal service, and people can bang around boxes and they really don't care because they just literally go like, well, hopefully they got the insurance, and then they call it a day. So I am going to be putting this on the used market locally, just because this is everything that I've wanted in an SG Special. Thanks for watching.